Okay. Sorry, I'm recording this for the people who are absent. Okay, so you should have out your sketchbook and a pen. I don't care what color it is. Yeah. So everything we're gonna start going over for this new project is in the second 9 weeks folder because we're in the second 9 weeks, right? It's in a folder called texture and pattern because those are the two things we're gonna be talking about. And the hyperslide is right in there. There's also a folder in there for videos. So like if you're absent, that's where I'm going to put like what I'm making right now. So you can go back and see if you missed anything. But the hyperslide is in there. I haven't finished the handout, but the rubric is linked. All right, so we're going to be talking about texture. Do you know what the word implied means? Anybody? Has anybody heard that word before? Implied. Yeah, it's like it's not really there, but you kind of just assume it is. Okay. So real texture and implied texture is what we're going to talk about.
The element.
Okay.
The element of texture. Texture is the tactile quality of a surface. Textures can be categorized by their method, function, and character. A texture's method refers to how it's created. This can be actual or implied. Actual textures have qualities that one could physically touch, like real fur or real scales. Implied textures are the illusion of a texture, as created through drawing techniques, or the virtual mapping of a texture using software. The function of a texture can also be important. Textures can be critical to identifying what an object is, and textures can offer a sense of spatial orientation. Lastly, the character of a texture spans the range of tactile descriptions. For example, rough or smooth, hard or soft, glossy or matte, and thousands of other tactile possibilities. These subtle visual cues provided by texture often help a work feel more interesting and more complete. And there you have it, the element of texture.
Okay. So texture can be real or it can be implied. That means it's not really there, but you think it is. Like you see it, you know if you were to be able to touch that thing, you know what it would feel like, right? So which one of these two pictures on the left or the right do you think is real texture? The left one. What do you think that would feel like? It's fur, but what does fur feel like? Soft. What else? What other words describe fur? There's lots of texture words. Ava? Soft. What else? Fluffy, silky, fuzzy. And then the other photo has implied texture. They drew it. It looks like those surfaces have texture, right? If you touch them, they would feel bumpy or rough. One of them looks like bark. One of them looks like hair. So you can see that it has texture, but it doesn't really because it's just a drawing. No, I didn't draw that. All right, so we're combining texture and pattern. Pattern is when something repeats. It could be lines, shapes, colors, doesn't matter. But we're going to create real. Will you close the door? I don't know how much that will help, but. A little. Okay. So we're going to make real texture and we're going to make implied texture. And the way we're going to do that is by using pattern on metal. Okay. So a lot of what we're going to talk about leading up to actually working on the project is how to create different patterns so that once you get your metal piece, mine's up here, you'll be able to create a design that shows texture. Awesome. So this is an example of a finished one that I found on the internet. So we're going to be creating real texture with the metal. It's going to pop out. You're actually going to be able to feel that it has texture. And then you're going to have a frame where with colored pencil, we're going to extend our designs and create implied texture. So we're going to use our colored pencils and make it look like if you touched it, there would be texture, but there's not really because it's flat. Okay, does that make sense? All right, this is one of my favorite ones. I love working with the metal. All right, so you should have a handout at your table. We're gonna do the front side together and then you're gonna complete the back side on your own, okay? So we're gonna practice drawing some patterns today. And then you'll be able to look up using your Chromebook ones on your own to come up with more ideas so that you have this whole resource in front of you when you're doing your final design. You have all these different patterns that you now know how to draw, okay? But before we get started, we're going to do a little calming. I feel like we need it now. So when I press this button, the circle is going to get bigger and smaller. When the circle gets bigger, you need to breathe in, like a nice deep breath, and hold it until the circle starts getting smaller. Once the circle gets smaller, you let it go, okay? Okay, so breathe in. Hold it. Now breathe out. I shouldn't hear you. In through your nose, out through your mouth. We're not talking, we're breathing. Okay. It's just supposed to help you calm yourself. It brings your heart rate down, calms your nerves and your thoughts, okay, because you're just focusing on breathing. And then we're going to draw. So I'm going to bring up my camera. Okay, so we're going to learn some different patterns today. I do not want you drawing in pencil, all right? You need to draw in pen. And we're just going to like be taking lines and kind of making them fancy, and you'll see that does really cool things, okay? So I'm going to start in this first box. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Okay. So how many of you have ever drawn like scales on a fish or like a dragon? Good. All right, so this one we're going to do is just like scales, but one thing I see people do a lot is they draw these teeny tiny little, just the tiniest of drawings. We're drawing big scales, okay? We have this nice big box. We're going to draw big ones. And I don't care how you start. You can start from the bottom. You can start from the corner. But it's just a bumpy line. When I'm drawing scales, I'm a little OCD. But I like for the scale to start about halfway from the one underneath it and end about halfway on the next one. That way they're staggered. So I'm going to fill my box. No, you can't restart. With scales. Don't draw these super tiny because we're going to want to do something inside of them. You need to have room. And also, just start drawing them bigger. Also, you'll be here forever, like until you're 50, if you try drawing them that small. It's like half of a circle. I'm just drawing like half of a circle. And if you're smarter than I am, you're not using a Sharpie because it bleeds through and then you won't be able to see the back of your paper. I'm just using this so you can see it, actually see my drawing. So every little scale starts about halfway from the one underneath it and ends halfway into the next one. That way they're staggered. And filling my box. And we have a lot of options of things we can do once we get to this point. We could draw circles inside of our scales. We could outline them. We could just draw lines. We could color in every other one. There's endless possibilities, but we're taking something that's simple. These were just bumpy lines, and we're just adding to them to make them look fancier than they are. I'm doing this because if I just had you guys look these up, you would be overwhelmed. But I want you to see that it's just lines. What's wrong? I've done it a million times. I am the art teacher. All right, so I'm going to show you a bunch of different options of how you could finish these, and then you can decide which one you want to do. So you could just kind of outline the space in the middle of the scale and then color that in. That always looks nice. You could fill the scale with just those lines. So I'm just drawing, like outlining it over and over again. I could draw like a border on it and then maybe draw some straight lines inside the border. Yeah, you can do these however you want. You could pick one thing and do them all that way. You could do like one row a certain way and then do the next row differently. I would say just leaving them this way is too plain. I would say you need to do something else to them. You could even just do that outline and kind of leave it that way. There are so many possibilities here. And all I'm doing is drawing lines. Maybe I just draw a circle inside of it and color the circle in. No matter which one you pick, they all look nice. Okay. You could draw multiple circles, just little dots. Okay, it's just practice. All right, we're gonna move on to the next one. I know you're not done. That's okay. I just want you to get the idea, and then we're gonna move on so we don't spend 25 years just learning how to draw patterns, okay? So this one, we're gonna draw some lines that kind of look like strings. So I'm gonna draw kind of like, we'll say 3 kind of like curvy lines. Okay. And then I want these to actually look like strings. So now I'm going to draw a line that's parallel to each one, just right next to it. So when I'm done, I'll have 6 lines. This is one of my favorite ones to do because it really looks like the lines are moving and like warping, and it's really fun. All right, so I'm going to turn my paper a little bit here so you can see. But what we're going to do is almost like, how many of you have drawn a spider web? Okay, it's very similar to drawing a spider web. We're going to be drawing some curved lines between these little strings, okay? But what I'm going to do is one section, the lines are all going to bend away from me, and the next one, they're all going to bend towards me. So, and then I'm going to draw them like these strings. So it's going to be 2 lines at a time. All right, so I'll start with my first one. It's bending away from me, and then I'm going to draw a line next to it so it looks like a string. I'm going to stop when I hit those initial lines I drew, and then I'll continue on the other side, but now the line's going to bend away, or this one's bending towards me. I'm sorry. It's bending the opposite way, okay? And that step right there, I'm just going to repeat it as I go down. Now, they can be as close together as you want them to be. I usually do, we'll say like a 1/2 inch apart if I'm eyeballing it. But it's important that whichever direction you decide these lines are curving, you're consistent with it. Otherwise, the illusion doesn't work. I'm going to keep going even when I run out of space. Okay, so right there, we already have a decent amount of illusion that those lines are bending. And if you have a lot of space, you can do more than just 3 of these. I'm going to actually show you. Okay, so here I used this illusion. I also used it here. Okay. So what we're going to do, once you have your strings, we're going to draw lines to fill in the spaces between them. So I'm going to do this carefully, and I'm just going to fill in the sections between them with lines. I'm not drawing over top of those strings because I want them to look like they're sticking out on top of this. So on those, just add shading so that you can see your strings that you drew and they look more like they're bending. Okay, it's important that even with these lines that I'm drawing in the background, that I'm focusing on what I'm doing, that I'm trying to be neat, because if you rush through these things, it looks sloppy. A lot of our problem is that we're rushing with everything we're doing because we just want to get done and play that darn beach ball game. And then you're sad or upset because it doesn't look as good as you wanted it to, but that's on you. This isn't all skill. This is, a lot of it is focusing and being neat and careful while you're working as opposed to rushing. All right, this next one is my favorite one, and it usually ends up being the 7th grader's favorite too. So we're going to draw, this is all straight lines. This whole thing is going to be straight lines, okay? So I'm going to pick a corner to start in, and I'm going to draw a line from that corner down almost like just outside of the next corner. So watch what I do here. It's a straight line starting in this corner. And I'm going to stop at that bottom line. You see how it comes just a little bit away from the corner there? Okay. And what I'm going to do is just repeat that step around my paper until I run out of space. So I'll turn my paper, and then I'm going to start where that line meets the edge of my box. And I'm going to draw another straight line just the same way, stopping just outside of that corner. Then I'll turn my paper and I'll do it again. I will say the smaller you make these like gaps here, the more effective your illusion will be. If you draw really, really big here, it kind of gets lost because you don't get enough lines. But I'm always stopping. Whoop, I went too far. I'm always stopping at the line I drew. I'm never crossing over any lines. And I'm always starting in the corner and stopping when I get to that line. And you just keep doing this, and as you go, you'll see the illusions start to happen. It's an illusion. You'll see. Then eventually your hole here will get so small that you won't be able to draw anymore. And you get this like bending effect. That's really fun. Again, the smaller you make these sections, the more effective it is. If you made these really big, it's hard to see because you don't have enough space to really make that illusion. Now, if you had just looked at this finish, would you have thought you'd be able to do it? No. But is it hard? No. I would not say any of these three things I just showed you are difficult. I've even seen some people use rulers to do this because they're like really OCD, and that's fine. I usually don't use a ruler. If you're doing a really big space, you probably need to use one, but they're just straight lines. You gotta keep practicing. All right, if you're done with this, we're gonna drop down to a new thing. I want you to just draw. You've got the right idea. Your sections are really big. See how small mine are? You just gotta practice it again. That's not bad for your first time.
No, how do you do that?
Should you have?
Awesome.
It is not. All right, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna draw some circles, but I don't want you to just scribble a bunch of circles, okay? Just like the other ones, we're focusing on what we're drawing, we're being careful, we're trying to be neat because we're using pen and you can't fix your mistakes, okay? So we're just gonna draw circles and they can overlap, but like don't draw through any of your lines. So you would stop. Like I'll show you here. I have these three. I could draw one big one behind them. I'm just picking up my pen when I get to the circles and continuing my line on the other side. So I'm just filling my space with circles, different sizes. They can overlap. I'm just not drawing through. Once I've drawn a line, that's like a border and I do not cross it. just like this top one, how we have all these different options of how we can finish it, it's the same thing with these. We could leave these the way they are. We could color in the negative space. That's the space around the circles that's not a circle. We could color that in. We can decorate the circles. So like one of my favorite ones is to draw spirals inside of my circle. Or I could just draw circles inside of my circle. I can outline them and then draw lines inside the border. Or I could do all of those things together. There are so many options. No, you can pick one thing and do it in all of them. You could combine some of them. You could just draw like, you know, like when you're drawing a heart and you add like the little highlight bubble, you could just draw that little thing, make it look like there's a highlight on them, like maybe they're marbles. It doesn't matter what you do as long as you're focusing while you're drawing and trying to be neat and careful. I just love the spirals. I think they're fun. All right, so we're gonna move on, even if you're not done, to the next box. Remember, we're focusing. So this one, you're gonna need to pay attention or I'm gonna lose you, okay? We're gonna pick a place to start in this box and we're gonna draw a dotted line all the way down. So I'm gonna draw a dotted line like that. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dashes. Doesn't matter how many you do. I would say less is more. And then I'm going to repeat on the other side. So just like our strings, I'm going to do the same line right next to it. And I need my dashes to line up. So I need to be really careful that I'm putting them in the same place. All right, so I know that I'm going to lose some of you and you're going to do this wrong. So please just actually try to pay close attention to where I'm placing this next line I'm going to draw, because you have pen, so like you can't fix it if you mess it up, okay? So we're going to make this line look like it has like a D or a backwards D on either side. Please do not draw them between your dashed lines. It's a part of the lines we drew. So pick a side. I'll start here. I'm going to make a D. And then my next set of lines, I'm going to flip to the other side, and that's going to be a backwards D on the other side. Then I'm going to skip down to the next set, and that side's going to be a D. You see what I'm doing here? And a skip down. This one's going to go on this side. All right, so what we're creating is it's going to look like a line that has like a snake or a vine or something wrapped around it. So we have our D's, right? What we're going to do now is we're going to kind of outline them. So we're going to connect the dashed lines that are around them. So I'm going to start on my left side. See this corner here? I'm going to connect it to the one below the D, the backwards D. And I'm going to do that for every single one. So it's like I'm outlining it. So this is what you'll end up with. We have more steps to do to actually make it look like it's wrapping around. Okay, so now we have to make some decisions. All right, which spot is it going over? Which spot is it going under? And then you rotate. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to say that the vine is coming to the front. So I'm going to connect this line here so it looks like it's coming across. Then the next one needs to go behind. So I'm going to connect the lines here. Do you see? I'm just connecting the different lines. Then the next one is going to come across. And this one, the stick's going to be in front. It's going behind. You can make that as long as you want it to go if you have the space. I think I have an example. So, like right here. Okay. So it's really fun. And to finish it, you would see how I added shading where it's crossing over, so it looks like it really is going behind the pole. Okay, we're moving on. Let's see here. All right, so I'm going to draw some straight lines. I'm going to start like kind of towards the corner. I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't have to do them exactly like me, but you want them to be straight lines like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a zigzag line now. So I'm going to start at one of these lines. I'm going to draw a diagonal line to the other one, and now it's going to go down. So it's a zigzag line, and it's changing direction every time I hit one of those lines that I drew. And that's really all we have time for, so we'll finish this tomorrow. Go ahead and clean up.